Okay, so good morning to all of you once again. So
Good morning, sir.
good morning.
Good morning, sir.
So
Good morning, sir.
good morning. So as you know that we started discussing about applied linguistics, and also I think almost finished discussing chapter 1 from Guy Cook. Some of the things are still left, but I will keep on referring to those some of the things. Let's say, and if you have understood, let's say so. And throughout, let's say in this course also, we'll discuss some of the things, let's say, and some of the things will keep on coming again and again, some of the issues, let's say. Anyway, so today what I was thinking that why not give a PowerPoint presentation, because some of the things are going, let's say, kind of discussion. So who said what, at times, it doesn't go into our head, So I thought of giving a PowerPoint presentation today. So, and let's say some of the things what is being discussed, but not necessarily what is being discussed, but more kind of some of the ready-made kind of definitions. Let's say, what is applied linguistics? Who says what? Let's say we know what Guy Cook says about applied linguistics, but many practitioners of applied linguistics, let's say, what is their position of, let's say, how trying to define applied linguistics, or can we define applied linguistics, in a simple or simplest term, in last 1 or 2 classes. I think the last class I was asking you that, can you define applied linguistics? And then mostly you have just given kind of, what applied linguistics, let's say, we do in applied linguistics. You must have mentioned some of the things like computational linguistics, language teaching or something, so that is the area, let's say, essential areas of inquiry we're talking about in applied linguistics. So the kind of definition, the simple definition, and so I'll try to divide the definition in different ranges, let's say. And is there any difference between linguistics applied or applied linguistics? And is there any difference between theoretical linguistics and applied linguistics? Or if there is any difference, how can you, let's say, we can draw that kind of differences, or the kind of distinctions between theoretical linguistics and applied linguistics? Or is it kind of, there is always a symbiotic relationship, the theoretical linguistics and applied linguistics, so one is dependent or dependent on other, so because we gain from one another. It's not like that, so applied linguist, they do not know theoretical linguist. Definitely they do know theoretical linguistics, so we mutually gain from one another. So that's what simple, let's say, gist of my class today. So I'll be trying to talk about these things in detail today in this class. Okay, so let me share the PPT today. And so is my screen visible to you?
Yes, it is visible.
Yes, sir.
It's visible. Okay, so let me, there are some problems. Let me just do it once more. Why is this problem? Just 1 second. Let me just resolve this issue. Is this visible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so as you can see, the title slide, what is applied linguistics? Huh? And so this is what I have already told you. And so what I'm going to discuss today briefly, that is the overview of today's lecture. What is applied linguistics? And so what we know what is applied linguistics, and last 2 or 3 classes we have been discussing about, what is linguistics, what do you do, what are the interdisciplinary areas of linguistics and some other things. So mainly today we'll focus the kind of bookish kind of definitions of applied linguistics, So ostensible definitions and extreme position. Some people take the extreme position that applied linguistics is like everything, wherever language, and wherever is language, applied linguistics can give kind of solutions, deals with all that kind of language related problems, So there is an extreme position. There is a, let's say, in general position is there. And and there itself in applied linguistics, we talk about source and target, So what is being applied? Is it linguistics? So what is the source? Is it linguistics that is being applied or something else, So we need knowledge of other related disciplines, you see. So what is the source and what is the target, So we'll come back to those points again. And as I already told you, that the kind of the theoretical linguistics, what do you mean by theoretical linguistics? And especially after onset of Chomskyan generative grammar, So the whole paradigm of theoretical linguistics, let's say, mainly people, when you talk about theoretical linguistics, mainly people refer to formal linguistics or the generative traditions, you see. So but that's not necessarily so. There are other theories are also there in linguistics, you see. So there are 2 different perspectives. One is the formalist traditions and another is the functionalist traditions. So within this formalist traditions and functionalist tradition, we have seen that, mainly applied linguistics are somewhere in the functionalist traditions, not necessarily in the formalist traditions, you see. But recent many researchers, especially in the second language acquisitions, people have gained many things from theoretical linguistics, So that part also we'll try to cover here in today's lecture. And the linguistics applied and applied linguistics, if you look at initially the history of applied linguistics, the proponents of mainly applied linguistics, they refer to that you have to make a distinction between linguistics applied and applied linguistics. That was the idea, but slowly and gradually, as applied linguistics expanded its horizon, we had seen that that distinction is not made now. So people or the practitioners do not make these distinctions. But initially, any book, handbook of applied linguistics, or any books, you will see that people try to make that kind of distinction between linguistics applied and applied linguistics. But that distinction is no more valid, because as I already told you, that applied linguistics have expanded its horizon in different directions. So that is now redundant to some extent. Okay, so these are briefly 3 or 4 points we'll try to discuss in today's class. Okay, now coming back, the kind of definition, as I told you, that applied linguistics is very difficult at times to give a definition, to define this whole discipline. As you know, that applied linguistics dealing with different disciplines, different issues, language related problems, so it's very difficult. And so we try to look at this ostensible or dictionary kind of definition, and again, people believe that it's very difficult to define applied linguistics, you see. So now if you look at somehow the definition as from the chapter 1 from Guy Cook, if you remember. So what is the definition given there? Any idea what you have understood so far, and what is being let's say told us by Guy Cook? Anyone? What does he say about applied linguistics? The kind of definition.
Sir, applied linguistics is basically an interdisciplinary branch of linguistics that aims to seek out and identify and provide solution for real life language related problems.
Okay, so that is what. Who is this? Because I cannot see who is speaking now, because if you start the screen sharing.
Asmita, sir.
Asmita Pradhan. Okay, Asmita. So let's say now, if I look at the book, Guy Cook, page number 5. So this is exactly what he says, that applied linguistics is concerned with relation of knowledge about language to decision making in the real world. This is the exact line from the book, page number 5. Look at this. The concern with the relation of knowledge about language to decision making in the real world. So this is what Guy Cook, another practitioner, the field, Vivian Cook, applied linguistics means many things to many people. Now, if you look at this definition, applied linguistics means many things to many people. So let's say for me this, for me that. So we cannot reach out to our goal. What exactly is applied linguistics? That's what Vivian Cook, the kind of definitions it tries to provide. So as a result, even if you look at the earlier definition by Guy Cook, is concerned with the relation of knowledge about language to decision making in the real world. Now what is happening? So all of you, let's say in the class itself, if you have we have, let's say, whether 25 or 26 participants, here itself we will see that many people will give different kind of opinion, or your expert opinion in this matter. So there will be disagreement, lack of consensus. To reach out to a particular conclusion, it will be very difficult, and there itself is a definitional problem. We had seen that, the whole the discipline to define what is applied linguistics. So now Kaplan and Widdowson, again, pioneers, especially Widdowson. If you talk about Kaplan and Widdowson, so it's a mediation between theory and practice. So it's trying to mediate between theory and practice. Basically, let's say the theoretical linguistics. So whatever the theory is there, and then let's say practice, the real practical kind of application. So that's what. So it's a mediation between theory and practice. So that's what Kaplan and Widdowson talks about. And now again, somewhere Hudson, another interesting figure in this field of applied linguistics, and a synthesis of research from a variety of disciplines, including linguistics. Now we say that it's not only about linguistics. A synthesis of research from a variety of disciplines, including linguistics. Try to understand that, that synthesis. So as we have understood that, computer science, we talk about psychology, education. There are many disciplines which are involved when you talk about applied linguistics, you see. So it is synthesis of research from a variety of disciplines, including linguistics. So that's what Hudson, 1999. Now, so again, going further to define what is applied linguistics, the kind of ostensible dictionary kind of definition, let's say. So So it says Coder. Again, this is one of the figure, very prominent figure, especially in applied linguistics. Coder. You must have heard about Coder, Pit Coder. You see. So Pit Coder says that, so when you talk about applied linguistics, it presupposes linguistics. Definitely, it's applied linguistics. It presupposes linguistics, and one cannot apply what one doesn't know. So, so it says that linguistics is definitely the essential thing. So you need to know. Let's say you are going to apply something. So, and in this case, linguistics. Let's say, so one cannot apply what one does not know. So to be an applied linguist, you have to be you have to be a linguist. Let's say you need to know linguistics. Let's say. So, and whichever the branches, let's say, whichever the branches for the matter, whichever phonetics, phonology. So you need to know all these things. Let's say phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, and all other things. So you need to know linguistics. Let's say it presupposes linguistics. One cannot apply what one does not know. So that's what Coder, Pit Coder. We'll come back to Pit Coder once we start discussing second language teaching and the theory, and okay, Pit Coder, Russian and other people also, you see. So now Rampton, 1997, Rampton says that it's understood as an open field in which those inhabiting or passing through simply show a common commitment to the potential value of dialogue with people who are different. So try to understand that it's understood as an open field. And that's what we'll look at the history of applied linguistics. If you look at initially, applied linguistics started with language teaching. The main agenda, or the main aim there, way back in 1940s, and when this discipline started, let's say in USA and in UK, and it started with language teaching, and slowly and gradually it expanded its horizon now. And the kind of areas applied linguistics cover, it's a huge field, let's say. So that's what Rampton says, that it's understood as an open field in which those inhabiting or passing through simply show a common commitment to the potential value of dialogue with people who are different, So again, let's say that we talk about different, whether it's language pathology, medical practitioners. So linguists also communicated with those people, medical practitioners, and there are many people, let's say, linguists working with the medical practitioners, and giving kind of solutions to the problem, to how different language-related problems, those people suffering aphasia, dyslexia, and how it can be overcome, you see, and or maybe how we can provide some kind of solutions to those different people for that matter, you see. So so this is where understood as an open field, and so that's what Rampton. Now looking at again the kind of definitions, and this is very general kind of view, commonly held view. This is where I think some people try to define applied linguistics, but they do not know what is exactly applied linguistics. Something like, if you want to know about applied linguistics, look around you. Language at the center, language at the core. So wherever language, you can apply applied linguistics there. So something like that, So, and if you have that kind of commonly held view, and everybody wants to be, an expert of applied linguistics, I think there will be some kind of problem. And exactly, I think in our daily day-to-day lives in different countries and different states, also we had seen that that kind of commonly held view, and how people have that kind of understanding. Let's say everybody thinks that he is an expert of linguistics or applied linguistics for that matter, because he knows the language, you see. So as if knowing the language, he knows everything. He is the expert, So there are certain things. So that kind of definitions, let's say, So I know a language, whether it's Bangla, Assamia, Odia. So that doesn't mean that I'm expert of the particular language. You see, yes, I know the language, but doesn't give that kind of guarantee that I'm the expert of that particular language, you see. So that kind of understanding, what happened, you see, let's say, especially in the language policy, language policy, language planning. Even if you talk about when introduction of, let's say, syllabus, curriculum, and other places, there are many people, they do not know exactly what has to be taught or what needs to be taught to the children, but they're prescribing one after another without knowing many nitty-gritty and all. So as a result, we had seen that, the kind of syllabuses, the things which is being introduced to the children, the syllabus which is being, let's say, introduced in different medium for that matter, you see. So because there are many experts, not necessarily know the things, but they have different kind of lineage to that particular, what should I say, whether it's the government or the particular body or the school authority or the college authority, they are there in the committee. See, and so let's say somebody is appointed as a member of especially syllabus making committee, and only he knows the language, and he doesn't have any formal training or something. So he is being, given that honorary position, and he's looking after all that kind of things, you see. So we had seen that, I think you will yourself will associate with this, what I'm trying to, convey it to you. So this is where the problem, at times it creates lots of problem, and many people, they are basically the sufferer, let's say. And one of the things, the case I can simply tell you, especially in Bengal, what happened after 1986 or 1987, during this especially left government school, especially in the school, what happened, English, especially in the government school, English were not taught till class 5. So they felt it, that because English is the language, let's say colonial language, so we should not still continue our legacy in the colonialism and all. So they totally banned English, especially in the government schools. Think about that. But at the same time, if you look at those politicians, I can say this, I say this thing, that those politicians and the people who are in the committee, they themselves were sending their children to those private medium schools, English medium schools. And who were the sufferer? The sufferer were basically the downtrodden, and especially who cannot access to some extent this, public private education. So this is where, and as a result, the huge, at least 2 or 3 generations, they suffered a lot. So beginning from 90s to 2000, and again till 2000 or 2005, then it came this English medium, especially in the class 1, it came back. So this is where you see some of the decisions which were taken by the authorities and by the experts. There are some kind of political lineage, there are some other things. So they, at times, they do not bother to ask the linguistic opinion also, if you look at it, So somewhere, this is where the commonly held view, that if you want to know about applied linguistics, look around you. And anybody can be an expert. Let's say, I know this particular language, whether it's Bangla, Rajbanshi, Uriya, Akomiya, English, and Hindi. That means that I can tell what to do and what not to do. So that's not necessarily the case. So they offer no help in constructing introductory syllabuses in applied linguistics, the kind of, and they lack clarity. So what is applied linguistics? You do not have any clarity. And so they lack clarity, especially in this case, so that kind of commonly held view, what I was discussing. Now, the kind of ostensive definitions, what I was talking about initially. So in support of those ostensive definitions, Polsky, 2005, it says that the definition of a field can reasonably be explored by looking at the professionals involved in the study. So Polsky says that, okay, since we do not know what is applied linguistics, and there is a definitional problem, so what we can look at, the practitioners who were, let's say, involved in the study. So looking at them, we can define what is applied linguistics. And Spolsky then tries to define what is applied linguistics. Is that applied linguistics is now a cover term for a sizable group of semi-autonomous disciplines, each dividing its percentage and allegiances between the formal study of language and other relevant fields, and each working to develop its own methodologies and principles. That's what Spolsky. So it's a cover term for a sizable group of semi-autonomous disciplines, not necessarily linguistics. Try to understand that. Each dividing its own percentage and allegiances between the formal study of language and other relevant fields, and each working to develop its own methodologies and principles. Okay, so this is what Spolsky, 2005, and Kaplan. Again, Kaplan, this is one of the founding editor of the Annual Review of Applied Linguistics. So somewhere Kaplan says that has long been concerned about the status of applied linguistics, convinced what it had to offer was not always understood or valued. So what applied linguistics wanted to offer, it was never being understood or being valued by the people for that matter. And same way, and I think that can be also extended to linguistics also, especially if you look at in different language policy, planning, and many other cases, the government, not necessarily they will listen to linguist for that matter, you see. And so there are other considerations. So related to applied linguistics also, it's the same thing, you see. What it had to offer was not always understood or valued. Now, dictionary definitions and Widdowson and Cook, and so that's again the kind of ostensible definition, Widdowson and Cook. So Widdowson, this famous figure in applied linguistics, and I think I have already given kind of reference to Widdowson in the course outline, and there are some books also, please do read. So Widdowson argues strongly for the coherence of applied linguistics, dismissing all illogical, the commonly held view that applied linguistics is a gallimaufry coming together in an ad hoc way of different disciplines. So he criticizes that, it cannot be a gallimaufry coming together in ad hoc way of different disciplines. It should not be. So that's what he criticizes, that kind of dictionary definitions, which was given by many people there. And Cook agrees with Widdowson as well. So Guy Cook, I'm talking about Guy Cook. It's not Vivian Cook, but Guy Cook. And the task of applied linguistics is to mediate between linguistics and language use. Mediate between linguistics and language use. That's what, if you remember, just before that, I was talking about the formal linguistics and the functional linguistics perspective. And when you talk about the functional linguistics, it's mainly we are talking about language use. So the task of applied linguistics is to mediate between linguistics and language use. So this is where the understanding, and Guy Cook defines applied linguistics as academic disciplines concerned with the relation of knowledge about language decision in the real world. That's what I think we have started our class starting with this definition of Guy Cook. The academic discipline concerned with the relation of knowledge about language to decision making in the real world. So, and if you have read this chapter 1, and you will see that Guy Cook again trying to delimit applied linguistics. It's not kind of gallimaufry coming together of different disciplines, but he delimits it in a that, okay, these are some of the areas applied linguistics looks into. So he recognizes the scope of applied linguistics remains rather vague. So the scope of applied linguistics remains rather vague. So the way we have discussed that is basically vague. But then he attempts to delimit his main areas of concern as consisting of language and education, language, work and law, language, information and effect. So these three areas mainly apply linguistics. That is the scope or essential areas of inquiry according to Guy Cook. So now I'm sure that you have read chapter 1. So now I'm just going to ask you that the first area, language and education, and this is one of the broad area. Within language and education, there are other sub areas are there. So he mentions about it. So could you tell me, so within this language and education, what he is talking about, what else he is talking about? Disha, could you just let me know if you have read the chapter or if you're listening to me? If Disha is not, I think maybe network issues, some other issues. Ashin Babu, are you listening? What Guy Cook talks about?
Yes, sir. I'm listening.
Language and
Sir,
education, yeah?
yes, sir. In that chapter, the under education, language and education, there were questions like what kind of a language should be taught in a community where there are different languages, there are people from different communities coming together, and also something along this line, sir.
Okay. Uh, who else would like to tell me what else language? Because these are three headings, and within these three headings, Guy Cook talks about, broadly talks about this language and education, language work and law. What are other areas will come here? What about Miraz Hassan or Hussein? Miraz?
Yes, sir. Sir, in language and education, he talk about sir first language education and sir second language acquisition वगैरह and sir clinical linguistics sir pathological linguistics. He talks about that.
Oh, thank you, Miraz. And language work and law. Hmm. So, Ensenia, can you tell me what is there in language work and law? Ensenia, are you listening? Okay. Anyway, so I don't know, maybe some network issues, and um, so who else would like to answer these three things: language and education, language work and law, and language information and effect? So, would like to interact and inform
So,
the class
sir,
that.
he in language, work and law, he talks about the workplace communication and then language planning, forensic linguistics.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. And language information and effect.
Uh, in, he talks about the uh, translation and interpretation.
Okay.
So he
Yes,
talks about lexicography too in the language
Lexicography too.
information and effect.
Okay. So, Payal Kumari, are you listening? Have you joined? I have no idea because I cannot see the screen today. Because once you start, so I'm just talking to this, let's say, screen in here. Sanika, Rishita. Anyway, so if you haven't read it, please do read, and I think we will have questions and also one test also. I will conduct online test as well as we will have, and I will start giving you again, assignment and all. So my class is not easy, especially in compared to other courses, other teachers. It's not easy course. It's a difficult in the sense that you have to be updated what is being discussed, what is being shared in the class, and so you need to read that, and especially the grading also depends on that, so especially my course, and so that's what. Anyway, so these three things, as I told you, that somewhere coming together in an ad hoc way, different disciplines. So he wants to kind of delimits the main areas and of concern of, especially applied linguistics, and this is where Guy Cook chapter. So none of you have given kind of, let's say, I do not know whether you have read it correctly or not. So So in language and education, if you look at first language acquisition, additional language education or foreign language education, or the second language education, clinical linguistics, language impairments. So the language pathology things I am talking about, language testing and evaluation, depending, especially language testing. So when you are learning a second language, so your proficiency, so how the teacher is going to evaluate the proficiency, so this is again another interesting area. And still, let's say, if you are famous, if you're aware with, there are different tests, let's say TOEFL has also been conducted. Depending on that, there is a score, and so whether you are a good speaker, bad speaker, or whatever the kind of speaker, so and especially if you want to visit different countries, either European countries or USA and all, you need to that clear that test, you see. And so language testing is another interesting area. So these are some of the things it tries to delimits, within that, and language, work, and law, another. So workplace communication, power relations, language planning. Some of the things I've already told you. What is language planning? So talking about language standardization, legislation, official status. So these are the things, official status, institutional use, and especially in the institution, let's say in the workplace, in the school, in the colleges, in the university. So which language to be used? And even if you look at our constitution, even in the constitution itself, you need to, it is clearly defined which language to use, whether it's Hindi, whether it's English, or whether it is other regional languages, or the H-schedule languages for that matter. So, and this is your assignment, not assignment, reading. I would say that in the next class, before you come and prepare, because I want at least, since you're doing linguistics, you should know what are the kind of linguistic rights we do have, or the citizens of this country, they do have. So if you look at the Constitution of India, and from Article 343 to 351, and there are different clauses are also there within those articles, 343 to 351, and also H-schedule languages, how many H-schedule languages are there. So I want you to know that which article talks about, the kind of linguistic rights, so next class I will ask you, and also maybe it will also help you to prepare for your UPSC. Many students prepare for UPSC. I think at least you need to know what articles talks about, which thing, and whether mother tongue can be used or not, especially in the school curriculum and other things, So this is where, so I want you to read linguistic rights, let's say, and what is enshrined in our Constitution of India. Okay, so this is what. So I'll be asking you in the next class. So don't tell me that, okay, I haven't read it. Okay, so this is where so all this language standardization, legislation, official status, institutional use, forensic linguistics. So this is where again, last year, not last year, in 2019, before this Corona pandemic and all. So I conducted 2 days seminar, especially in forensic linguistics, forensic and corpus linguistics. So there are many experts from India and also abroad joined, so let's say especially in forensic linguistics, the criminal and the legal investigation, profiling a speaker, authorship, and there are many other things we look into in forensic linguistics, and this is also one of the really interesting areas, and you can also make your career in this, and you have a huge prospect in forensic linguistics as well. So this is one. And another thing, language information and effect. And so language information and effect, literary stylistics. So that's what another, I teach a course, stylistics, in the department, stylistics, discourse analysis. I'll be offering this course to 4th semester student this year. And So I do offer those courses as well. So so literary stylistics, another area, critical discourse analysis, CDA. This is again this course also I teach. Translation and interpretation. I think this will be taught in the center itself. Translation theory and practice by Gopal. Gopal teaches this course, translation theory and practice. Information design and especially information design, lexicography, bilingual, multilingual dictionary, thesaurus and all. So for this lexicography thing, it's really interesting. The whole history, if you look at how dictionary were made now, because of this advancement of technology, we have this kind of dictionary, let's say, multilingual dictionary, and also there are different online dictionaries also. You can build, you can make a dictionary, and whichever the languages you do speak, you see, and there are different softwares that are available. And for us, earlier we used to work on in Toolbox. There is a software, but Toolbox nowadays, because it has some problems with, and we have expanded to Language Explorer. That's another software. And Language Explorer is pretty good when it comes to lexicography and dictionary making. And our colleague Professor Anubita B and myself, I taught this course, Field Linguistics, many years, and then also train students how to make dictionary. And recently one of my students and Professor Abi, they have published a dictionary of Saneno. So the student, he is working with me, Rahul Pachori, and with Professor Abi, they have published a dictionary of Saneno. Saneno is language again spoken in the Nicobar Islands, Andaman Nicobar Islands, and they have published dictionary in especially in these areas. So let's see if we're interested, whichever the languages or whichever the dialect or variety you do speak, you can make a dictionary of your language, whether it's a multilingual dictionary or trilingual dictionary or bilingual dictionary, whichever the dictionary, So so this is again really interesting area here, and so Guy Cook, that's what I was, as we were discussing about. So he wants to delimit the whole things, because we are not going into any direction here and there. So 3 main areas. Then so now this is where I was telling you that the kind of myth, so we should not have that kind of misconception that language is everywhere and applied linguistics is the science of everything. So if somebody has that kind of understanding, it's, for us, it's a myth, it's a kind of misconception. Applied linguistics is not the science of everything, you see. And if you remember the kind of discussion what we had initial 1 or 2 classes, I told you that, and also you agree with me that to some extent we do not want to give any ready-made solution to a particular problem, you see. So how to so somewhere, let's say if there are kind of problems, so we need to look at in the other parts of the world or other parts of the country, people having different similar kind of problems, and learn from their experiences, and also try to get something from the from other researchers, what is their view on these. And then necessarily you yourself can make a survey, go to the field and try to know what people really want, let's say, and then maybe you can propose something, so something like that. So applied linguistics is not the science of everything. Let's say I am having kind of language related problems and approach applied linguist and he will give me that kind of solution. No, not necessarily the case, you see. So now this is where applied linguistics, if you look at it, has moved so far in different directions, and many people, especially Penny Cook and others, and so it is, again, this is termed as critical applied linguistics, and it opens up a whole new area of questions and concerns. There are different questions and concerned issues such as identity, sexuality, access, ethics, disparity, difference, desire, or the reproduction of otherness that have hitherto not been considered as concerns related to applied linguistics. So related to otherness here, let's say especially In India, if you talk about otherness here, I'm talking about mostly, Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak are mainly the new Ambedkarite literature which have come up, and not only that, the Dalit literature for that matter also. So again, that kind of the subaltern things also that can also come and crop up here in critical applied linguistics. So it has expanded in different directions and all. So that's what the extreme position, Pennycook, and there are many people, let's say, working in these areas, and in that direction also. The critical applied critical discourse analysis, and critical discourse analysis also looks into different areas for that matter, you see, and that's the extreme position. So this is what we try to understand so far, looking at some of the definitions and applied linguistics. So, and now when you're talking about applied linguistics, so what is applied linguistics? So what is the source and what's the target, and what is its source? What exactly has been applied, you see? So there are 2 or 3 types of interpretations we do have here. So one is, let's say, the narrow interpretation is that what is being applied is only linguistics. And linguistic deals with idealizations. It can say very little about language-related problems of the real world. And if you talk about, applied linguistics, what is being applied is only linguistics. And if you look at linguistics deals with idealization. And it can say very little about language-related problems of the real world. And that's what exactly. If you look at linguistics, and within this formal linguistics only looking at the forms, the structure, and trying to generate theories and all from looking at the forms only, not looking at the language use. So within that, let's say, it's a very narrow kind of interpretation we will have if you're talking about only what is being applied is only linguistics. And that kind of formal idealization, or let's say the Chomsky's version of linguistics for that matter. So it's very, very narrow interpretation we're trying to get here. Try to understand that. And another, the broad interpretation of applied linguistics, as we have already discussed, is that it must concern itself with everything to do with language. Everything to do with language, and the language as the center, the heart of everything, so, of our life. So it must concern itself with everything to do with language, So that's not necessarily the case, you see. So that's the very, very broad interpretation we do have for applied linguistics, you see. And another, we do have a kind of compromised interpretation of applied linguistics. Let's say this is where personally there is some problem with this, anyway. So the kind of so the compromised position or the interpretation is that linguistics, it seems, must play an important role. That's what the compromised interpretation of applied linguistics, it seems, must play an important role in applied linguistics, but no means the only role. So this is where the compromised interpretation of applied linguistics here. Applied linguistics must also draw on psychology, sociology, education, measurement theory, and so on. So, and applied linguistics also must draw on psychology, sociology, education, measurement theory, and whatever other things, also related things as well. So this is where the real. So we'll try to take the mainly the compromised interpretation of applied linguistics, neither the narrow interpretation or the broad interpretation, but mainly the compromised interpretation of applied linguistics. Okay. So now the source and target, if you look at, that's what we're discussing here. The target clearly cannot be anything and everything to do with language. Clearly cannot be anything and everything to do with language. And Corder, if you look at Pete Corder, and especially Corder and all, so they mainly looked at the areas of applied linguistics, mainly language teaching, because applied linguistics started with language teaching, as I told you, somewhere in 1940s and all.
language teaching, speech therapy, translation, and language planning. So these are some of the areas Pete Coder delimits, and looks into, let's say. And Bramfit, another scholar. So what could be the, let's say, working definition of applied linguistics? According to Bramfit, a working definition of applied linguistics will then be the theoretical and empirical investigation of real-world problems in which language is a central issue. So again, trying to give a definition is that somewhere will then be theoretical and empirical investigation. So you are going to look at the theory, and those theories, not necessarily linguistic theory, maybe it's related to psychology, sociology, and other related fields also. And an empirical investigation, try to make empirical investigation of real world problems in which language is a central issue. So trying to kind of expand it and trying to make it a kind of mediation between theory and practice. So Bramfit, 1997. So really interesting, the kind of definition by Bramfit. And so these are some of the things, the kind of definition, working definition we do have for applied linguistics. And linguistics and applied linguistics, as always, we had seen that there is a kind of difficult kind of relationship. And now if you look at linguistics, for that matter, as I already told you, that if you look at the whole linguistic study, and especially the generative study and all, it's basically trying to look at the structure of the language, so the formal parts of the language, So what is this linguistics, let's say? Linguistics is something like the study of language in general. That's what scientific study of language. We try to understand that. The generalities underlying actual appearances and abstract real idealization of language rather than the way it is idealized in the real world. So the whole discipline, if you look at and focus, let's say, is basically the formal part of the language, the structure of the language, and abstract idealization. So what could be the rules? What could be the phrase structure? And whether let's say S sentence, NP, VP, then VP. What do you have? I'm just talking about the basic phrase structure, and then let's say later on X bar, extended standard theory, extended extended theory, and let's say and government and binding, and then you come to minimalist program, and all that kind of abstract idealization of the language, and where syntax rules, and even within that also, if you look at other core areas of linguistics are also abundant to some extent. If you look at the whole formal study, so at times within this generative traditions, morphology is also ignored at times. The syntacticians, they say that, okay, word formation is not necessarily the work of the morphology. Word formation is done in the syntax itself. So you do not need to recognize a field like morphology. There is no need for morphology, So whole new paradigm came into picture there later on, So, and they think about morphology in a different way. So the word formation is done in the lexicon itself. If you look at the whole the work by Halley and Marans, distributive morphology, somewhere it's a different kind of things, So anyway, so what I'm saying is that if you look at the theoretical understanding of linguistics, it's mainly the formal structure, looking at the structure and all, and rather than the way it is idealized in the real world. So that's what whole linguistic traditions, if you look at, So we are not concerned about the real world problem. So now within this linguistics, the kind of schools, the formal schools, and the formal schools mainly dominates, let's say, in linguistics. So, and the functional schools. So functional schools, as if like treated as, always, got this stepmotherly treatment, functional schools. And so the formalist thoughts dominate and the language use is ignored. And so within this formalist school, if you look at it, so language use is ignored, and or functionalist is often looked down upon. In a way, if within these traditions, we look at many formalists, they look down upon the functionalist, and there is really interesting debate related to formalist and functionalist traditions, and at times they do not talk to one another, as if like formalists, they have that kind of mindset that we are the one, we know the language, we know the structure, what use you need to know. So at times they do not talk to one another, so there is an interesting article by Joanna Nichols that we need to talk to each other. So that's a really interesting article by Joanna Nichols by formalist traditions and functionalist traditions, you see. So there are different schools within this linguistics. So mainly the formal schools and the functional schools, you see. So you'll get to know these things later on, let's say the whole thing, the philosophical aspect as well, and especially in PhD and all, let's say little bit of theoretical insight, and so the formalist, within these formalist schools, so we have this prominent figure, as you know, so that Chomsky. So Chomsky came into the picture, let's say after 1957, with his publication of syntactic structures, and that's what and the kind of concept he has introduced. What are those concepts? You must have read those things, and before coming to JNU, I'm sure, or even if you haven't understood, let's say, or read it. So what is that? The representation of language in the mind, let's say, the competence, let's say. So what you know about a particular language, so that's what the representation of language in the mind, and the performance, the way in which people actually use language in everyday life. So within this, the distinction between competence and performance, Chomsky will always say that competence does matter. Performance is like the secondary factor, you see. So the language use is being again ignored in the formal tradition. If you look at, the competence does matter. That's not necessarily the performance, you see. So the competence, performance, and and there are other extending this, let's say, language is essentially biological rather than a social construct. So social construct, if you look at the whole tradition here, rather trying to locate language somewhere in the biological structure, in the human either so mind or brain. For Chomsky initially, even if you look at mind or brain, he always gives a slash, mind or slash brain, and so brain, and there is no clear-cut exact definition for that matter. So why is that? In a way, we can understand that yes, mind could be the physical, the brain could be the physical representation of the mind. Not necessarily so, but Chomsky doesn't make it clear. Even if you study New Horizons, his 2002 publications. So really interesting, that kind of mind, brain, and intuition, and let's say for many of us, let's say, and so if somebody is making mistakes, let's say grammatical mistakes and all, so for especially the generativist and all, so you need to go into your intuition. So your intuition can give you that whether the sentence is grammatically ill-formed or grammatically well-formed, whatever. So this intuition can tell you, and then within that, the whole generative model, he tries to present the abstract model of the language, you see, and so whole UG things, we'll introduce that thing later on. In this course also, I'll talk about Chomsky in detail, let's say, is when I talk about first language acquisition and the second language acquisition, the kind of abstract model he proposes there. So, but mainly if you look at the kind of relationship, the kind of difficult relationship, it is mainly somewhere in this intuition, mind, brain, and the social construct, the other things, the functionalist aspect, the language use, which is the prime concern of applied linguistics, or all of us, let's say, have language related problems, which is the practical problems, and those practical problems are especially in linguistics are abundant to some extent, you see, are neglected for that matter, you see. So this is where now for later on, if you look at within these also, within formalist traditions, sociolinguistics also, sociolinguistics is mainly language use and all, you see, if you look at it, and even those things were also looked down upon for that matter, you see. So but after 1960s and all, we had seen people, many people like William Labov, the whole Joshua Fishman, and many people, even they're inspired by the formalist model, but at the same time were looking at language use and all, you see. And so the sociolinguistics, language and society, variety of language, dialectology, social groupings, and each speech community and all. So all these things, later on many people worked on this area, and slowly and gradually in the formalist traditions, some of the concepts were also being introduced, let's say, later on. William Labov is one of the famous person, though he's in the functionalist traditions, if you looking at language use. And there are many people, let's say, especially in the functionalist traditions, and so the functionalist, functional linguist, for that matter, or linguistics. So for them, language as a means of communication, the purpose it fulfills, and how people actually use their language. So this is where the whole functionalist perspective. So we're trying to look at from that perspective, and then let's say especially advancement of technology and the corpus linguistics, computational linguistics, whole new area of areas came into picture, and as a result, you cannot simply neglect language use, and so vast data banks of words of actual language use came into picture, word frequencies and combinations. So there are many things, let's say, because giving too much importance to your intuition, and somehow, and from the data or from the language use, let's say, you can generalize things depending on the, especially the language use. The rules can be generated as well. So it's not only intuition somewhere else, So there are many things, and especially in computational linguistics, if you look at somehow the computational linguistics models and all, they look at mainly the output model. There are many people they'll try to look at, and their theories somewhere coming into picture, somewhere looking at the language use and trying to generate something, and the kind of sequencing they do, especially looking at the language outputs, then come to the input. But rather, if you look at the model, let's say, proposed by Chomsky and all, from input to output, but the whole model based on the language use for that matter, you see. So the kind of abstract realization of, so to say, the phoneme or the word or the phones, let's say, from phoneme and phones, let's say. So what is the abstract realization? So the computational linguist will look at all the phones, and the phones are really important. And the generative model, if you look at, they'll say, okay, there is an abstract phoneme, and from that abstract phoneme, the surface forms are generated. But let's say the surface forms is not only 3, it can be 4, and it can be 5 or more than that. And you you have to take into consideration of all. So the computational linguistics or corpus linguistics will definitely look at the outputs and try to generate kind of rules or whatever. So somewhere that's the problem initially. Even if you look at the translation and all, translation mainly the competition, this Google translation and all. So depending on the theory, let's say, depending on the theory, and since there are many things that are not incorporated, and as a result, we got very bad kind of translations. but nowadays, still the translation is still there are lots of work to be done in translation. People are working on these areas, but what I'm trying to say is that computational linguistics, corpus linguist, so they do give importance to language use. You see, so the kind of abstraction, idealization of language we try to see in theoretical linguistics or in Chomskyan linguistics, and as a result, we are, like, let's say, detaching language from the experience of its use. That's what is happening, in theoretical linguistics and all. And somewhere the purpose is to be described and explained. And so these are, again, within this theoretical linguistics and Chomskyan linguistics, there are three types of adequacy talks about. One is observational adequacy, one is descriptive adequacy, and another is explanatory adequacy. So within this, so the whole structural linguistics and later on generative linguistics were influenced, or they try to describe and explain things on this direction. So observational adequacy, descriptive adequacy, and explanatory adequacy. So anyone who would like to share what is this observational adequacy, if you have read it somewhere in a book, or any knowledge about these three things, anyone would like to intervene here?
So knowing what sentences are grammatical and what are ungrammatical, that would be observational adequacy from the point of view of a native speaker.
Mm-hmm.
Descriptive, I think, is the one where you can tell precisely what construction, how it's working within the grammar.
Okay.
I don't remember explanatory.
And what about explanatory?
I think it's the UG, the grammar which can explain any grammar. I don't remember.
Okay, thank you, Parth. Anyone else would like to comment here? Observational adequacy, descriptive adequacy, explanatory adequacy, or something? Because the structural linguistics, as well as the, let's say, Chomskyan linguistics is influenced by these three. Okay, you haven't come across with these terms for that matter. Anyway, so as Parth was talking about, so observational, the word, observational itself, so you need to, let's observe the data, and depending on your observation, you come up with a kind of explanation, and you try to describe things, you see. So it's purely on observational things, you see. So the data, so the whole structural linguistics, if we talk about, so beginning with, let's say, socio, and later on, let's say, all this Edward Sapir, Wolf, and Zelikis Harris, Nida, all this structural linguist and all, and so somehow this observational adequacy, and so you need to go into the next level when you come to the descriptive adequacy, and try to incorporate your intuition for that matter, and try to explain things, and intuition does come into the picture in descriptive adequacy to some extent, and Chomsky, so bringing mind here, let's say, and explanatory adequacy, again going one step further, and again talking about, to some extent, how the children, they acquire the particular language, you see. So you need to explain that, and so the whole, so it's not really about the mind things and how this little chatterbox, let's say, to some extent, acquire a particular language, whichever the language they're being exposed to and all. So the whole discipline of linguistics, especially if you look at it, that's the way three adequacies are discussed there, and but somehow, if you look at again the use factor, as we are talking about language use, there itself is again neglected here, and the field like applied linguistics, as we are talking about, engage with decision making and mediation between abstract analysis and the real language experience of everyday lives. That's what we try to talk about: mediation between abstract analysis and the real language experience of everyday lives. And it takes help from theoretical linguistics, and so we take help, or the applied linguistics takes help from theoretical linguistics, make the theories relevant or irrelevant to the problem in hand. So it's a particular theory is relevant or irrelevant. So it's basically after application of the particular theory you get to know, and so let's say child acquisition theory, and we'll get to know there are many theories related to first language acquisition, second language acquisition proposed, and there are many UG principles, let's say, for that matter, proposed by Chomsky and other his followers, and we had seen that those theories became redundant for that matter. So there are many UG principles, and so principles and parameters for that matter, you see. So it's basically the real application, and the field linguist, mainly after working on different languages, they came up with different kind of structures. They encounter different kind of structures, and as a result, if you look at it, and so the UG principles had to revise. They had to revise those particular UG principles for that matter, you see. So it takes investigation and theorize of its own, So that's what applied linguistics. And so linguistics following behind applied linguistics to respond to the practical questions applied linguistics raises, attempting to answer them in, and by doing so, widening its range of coverage. So what happened, let's say, applied linguistics, the kind of theoretical things were proposed there. So applied linguistics again try to look at those, the real things, and as a result, what happened? The theoretical linguists again looked at those problems and widening its range of coverage, and especially theoretical linguistics, got many inputs from second language acquisition, the kind of researches we are talking about, second language learning, that kind of researches. So theoretical linguistics got many inputs from applied linguistics, and especially in this area, SLA, and sociolinguistics and language variation. Again, many inputs from sociolinguistics and language variation, as I was telling you, and the theoretical linguistics, and I was talking about William Labov and many people, and comparative linguistics at the same time. From comparative linguistics, applied linguistics, especially theoretical linguistics, got its input. Comparative linguistics and the kind of language typology I was talking about, so these things, language typology. From language typology, when they came up with different kind of structures, so they had to revise the universal, the kind of principles, as I was talking about, and so these are so applied linguistics in the pole position, and applied linguistics can then be seen to be the driver. So, and especially in error analysis, in teaching of English as a foreign language, we had seen critical discourse analysis in one area, stylistics in another area, literary stylistics, LSPs, linguistics, language for specific purposes. It is another interesting area we have looked into, language for specific purposes, and we'll talk about LSPs if you get time, especially in this course, a little bit of, but yeah, I'll talk about LSP. And translation, this is another area. So you have the kind of, it's immediate, let's say, applied linguistics is immediate, and the theoretical linguist, on the other hand, it's a distant, kind of motive you do have. And so applied linguistics is clearly multifactorial in that, in addition to linguistics, it draws on other disciplines: psychology, sociology, education, politics, and other disciplines, and the whole areas, other disciplines. And linguistics also needs to be do the same and cannot isolate itself from the daily uses of language. So our kind of suggestion is that linguistics, for that matter, the way linguistics is being conceived, only the formal studies, too much importance to formal linguistics or formal studies. So linguistics also needs to do the same and cannot isolate itself from the daily uses of language. That's what our understanding. But nowadays, why I'm saying this, this would be correct till 2000 and all. But after 1990s, what happened, or till 1990s till 2000, linguistics are mainly focusing on the formal study, and wherever you look at, whether it's India, whether or in USA and America and other places, it was given too much importance. But later on, people like Bernard Comrie, you must have heard about Bernard Comrie, and there are many people who were working in this direction, and they somehow came up with many counter examples of, so to say, UG principles and all, and looking at the real language data from different languages of Africa, different languages of Australia and all, you see, and Papua New Guinea and other places and all. So and that's also the time many theoretical linguists, they themselves started working on different endangered languages of the world. And when they started working on the endangered languages of the world and then looked at the UG principles, then they say, oh, that is not working in those particular languages. So the kind of armchair perspective, if you try to look at, just simply sitting on the armchair and trying to flout a particular kind of theory that, yeah, if I move these from this position to that position, so that would be the principles, and that principle will work for all the languages of the world. So that's not necessarily the case, you see. So linguistics also needs to do the same and cannot isolate itself from the daily uses of language, So this is where our understanding or suggestion to the formal linguist, mainly people who are just totally looking at the theory and totally theory blind for them, like theory is everything for them, So for them, we have this suggestion. So you should not be theory blinded, you see. So you should look at the practical aspects, what is happening. So this is where, so in summary, what we can say that applied linguistics is a theorizing discipline, and there has to be a bridge or marriage, bridge or marriage between theoretical understanding of language and practical experiences. That is the action part we are talking about. There has to be bridge, and that's what even in India, it's good to know that many theoretical linguists, for that matter, and they started working on, as I already told you, started working on different let's say lesser known languages. And our center itself, our center for linguistics, if you talk about, it's the whole tradition, if you look at, and the people who are involved in applied linguistics or theoretical linguistics, and they were doing both. Let's say Professor Anvita Abi, even if you look at her, she herself was doing theory, but at the same time looking at or working on different lesser known languages of the world, and one of our colleagues, she has retired now, and Professor Bachna Narang, again famous applied linguist, looking at different issues, but again theoretically very, very sound, and also has lots of theoretical contribution. If you talk about this person like Professor Pramod Kumar Pandey, another renowned figure in the field of phonetics and phonology, or also applied linguistics, he was also doing lots of projects. He had project also, DST projects also, trying to look at multilingual lexicon. Now he's the vice chancellor or director of this Deccan College. Now it's not a college, Deccan College, deemed university. So he was also theoretically very sound, but at the same time also looked at different aspects, the language use. And for that matter, he was also a functionalist. He's definitely formalist, but he the kind of views he had that, the functional perspective should not be ignored also. So that's what. So I think there is an interview published with. I interviewed Professor Pandey during at the time of his retirement. The whole interview, I think it's there in published in from Indian Linguistic Journal, and the whole interview is there. So then we talked about the whole link between formalist and functionalist traditions. There also he discusses what his views on this, and for him also is something like there has to be a bridge between the formalist and the functionalist traditions as well. And so this is where so the theoretical understanding of language, we need to have a theoretical understanding, and at the same time the practical experiences, the action, you see. And for that matter, in our one of our again theoretical person, Professor Aisha Kidwai. I do not know whether she is teaching a course or not, but Aisha Kidwai, even if we talk about, she's again a famous syntactician. At the same time, does field work, talking about different language-related issues, whether it's language documentation, language endangerment, and even dictionary making and all. So we talk about all these things, So, but earlier, as I was telling you, prior to 2000 and all, so the whole discipline, as if like it's a formal study, and not only in India, in other parts of the world, in the Europe, in the USA, and other places as well. So applied linguistics wholly a cross-disciplinary subject. So you need to, it's a cross-disciplinary subject. It's not only one discipline, linguistics and let's say psychology, not necessarily so. There are many other, let's say, things came into picture. And so what is our understanding is that applied linguistics is a theorizing rather than a theoretical discipline. So it's a theorizing rather than a theoretical discipline. So in our understanding, it's a theorizing discipline rather than a theoretical discipline. And it takes theorizing approach to practical experiences in the language profession and in language use. So language professions and in language use. And why AL is theorizing discipline? And so there is a two-way relationship between theory and practice. Applied linguistics explores the professional experiences of the practitioners. So we'll try to explore the professional experiences of the practitioners. That's what, as I told you in the initially also, if you remember that, we look at the professional experiences of the practitioners, and let's say the people like, especially in the multilingual education, if you look at, and so in a given situation, you try to explore this, multilingual education in a particular school. And let's say it's a metropolitan area. There are 3 or 4 groups are there. Some people speak Santali, some Bengali, some Hindi. Let's say there are 50 students and the house is divided. Let's say out of 50, there are 12 or 13 students. It's something like that, So you want to introduce the multilingual model, MLE, multilingual education. So how? And even the parents also want it, let's say, because this NEP also proposes the same thing. Mother language, home language, local language, the children should be taught. So how do you want to, let's say, start this? Which way? So at least try to explore the professional experiences of the practitioners, then try to see who has done it. Let's say in the European setting or the American setting. And so that setting may not be necessarily true in Indian setting, because India, we have a different kind of multilingual environment here. So in India, let's say, especially in this case, we talk about, again from JNU, there are 2 persons who are really involved. One is Professor Ajit Kumar Mahanti. Now he's a retired professor. He was there in Zakir Hussain Center in education. So Ajit Kumar Mahanti and another lady, Professor Minoti Panda, she's still there in education center. So they are like pioneers of this, you see. And then this another person, Professor Mahendra Kumar Mishra, So we are having a seminar with Professor Mahendra Kumar Mishra this 9th, 10th, and 11th February, not in JNU but somewhere else. So Mahendra Kumar Mishra from Odisha, he's also one of the pioneer in folkloristic tradition and studies. And at the same time, if you look at multilingual education and all, so this person, so you need to get that kind of experience, what the people, how they are doing and all, and then maybe you can start your own model, or maybe kind of improvise the things what they have done. So that's what, so you can theorize thing, let's say. So it also draws on theories from related disciplines. So theories from related disciplines. And so one of the things, as I was talking about, especially folklore, Mahendra Kumar Mishra and all. So if you look at it, his model would be definitely, he would say that, okay, why not introduce some folkloristic things in the narratives of that particular people, let's say. Instead of introducing narratives from other communities, why not introduce the narratives of their own communities? Try to understand that the narratives, or whichever the songs for that matter, songs or the folk rhymes or the children rhymes. So all this. So why not introduce the folk things? And every culture, you do have these things, you see. So he will try to again suggest that, introduce that folk narratives, some narratives, and try to teach children, depending the kind of local environment what you have, you see. So instead of introducing something which is not known to the children, so better introduce something from their own community, So the folk narratives or folk games or folk rhymes, he always will talk about. Okay. So some things, and so applied linguistics related to this really interesting book by Alan Davis, 2007, and I'll share this book with you. So it said, an introduction to applied linguistics from practice to theory. So look at the title of the book, and introduction to applied linguistics from practice to theory. Rather, earlier what we are doing from theory to practice, but rather it's a practice to theory. So it's a theorizing discipline, you see. So look at especially the kind of practices, and from the practice you can come back to the theory. And so this is where a really interesting book by Alan Davis, and all these things, some of these things are discussed. I think share this book with you and in the Google Classroom. So applied linguistics. So the things you need to keep in mind, that that's what the discussion is all about in this class related to applied linguistics and linguistics. So you need to take critical approach, in my understanding. Always critical, and must do is to a critical approach to it, let's say whether it's a literature, language policy, and politics, whichever the things, let's say, or education, or whatever you talk about for that matter, and problematize it, and in so doing observe easy solutions and packaged remedies. So do not provide anything kind of ready-made kind of solutions and packaged remedies to a particular problem. So try to take a critical approach. I think I have already told you this thing. So if a particular community is facing this kind of language related problem, so in your case, try to study the community, go and see, do the field work, interview the people, and see what could be the solutions, let's say, what could be the solutions. So do not give any packaged remedies. Yes, this is being practiced. Let's say this MLE model is practiced in Odisha, and this is really successful in Odisha and in different tribal communities. And you want to impose the same thing, let's say, in other parts of Bihar, let's say, some areas, and you never know, because of your wrong policies, people may suffer. You never know. Or maybe people really, they do not want it. So that's what, so do not give any kind of package kind of solution, package remedies to a particular kind of problem. But see, that's what we all try to do it, especially applied linguists, we try to do it, do not give kind of ready-made solutions. So applied linguistics and is trying to resolve language-based problems that people encounter in the real world. So it's trying to resolve language-based problems that people encounter. So we're trying to resolve. So that's what applied linguistics. So I would suggest you, if you, let's say in future want to be applied linguist, or even for that matter a linguist, let's say, and looking at some of the areas, let's say we're talking about. So do not provide any kind of ready-made solution to a particular problem, but try to problematize it. And so what is applied linguistics in summary? So as so far we understood that applied linguistics is definitely interdisciplinary, drawing on multitude of disciplines including psychology, sociology, language pedagogy, as well as theoretical linguistics. So we do have these disciplines, the theoretical linguistics, definitely theoretical linguistics, and as well as the related field like psychology, sociology, language pedagogy for that matter, you see. So language teaching, the whole traditions there, So these things, and was not limited to language teaching, but included a broad range of fields, including lexicography, and that's what this Guy Cook, if you remember the three main things he was trying to. So lexicography, stylistics, speech pathology, translation, language policy, planning, and among others. There are many other things, so it's not only limited to language teaching. So some people, they feel that applied linguistics is basically language teaching. So that's the misconception. Misconception is that, yeah, to some extent, applied linguistics began with language teaching, but that's not the case, As I told you that it expanded in different directions and all, So now, so it's performed a mediating function between theory and practice. So that's what, and so there are many people, let's say, saying this, whether it's Hudson, synthesis of research between theory and practice, again, Buckingham and SK. So there are many people, they're saying the same kind of things in a different way. So it's a mediating function between theory and practice, So there are many. So, and so what we understand so far is a problem-based by Coder, and brings linguistic insight and analysis to bear on practical issues of language use. So mainly talking about language use, situated in time, place, society, and culture. So this is where Sridhar, and Sridhar is again one of the linguists, fine linguist, Sridhar, Indian linguist, and I think social linguist or applied linguist for that matter, you see, and linguistic insight and analysis to bring bear on practical issues of language use, situated in time, place, society, and culture. So these are the things you need to keep in mind. That is what applied linguistics in. So so applied linguists and other interactions with other experts of the field. So we need to do that kind of things. So as I already told you, that the field like, let's say, psychology, sociology, anthropology, ethnology for that matter, and education, as always talked about education, and applied linguistics, and applied linguist who is a teacher trainer, for example, let's say there are 2 or 3 case studies if we talk about, let's say, an applied linguist who is a teacher trainer, for example, must draw not only from on the field of linguistics, but also on the field of education and psychology. So let's see, if you are a teacher trainer, and many people, they go training teachers and all. So you must get the input from education and psychology, the related discipline, you see. And that's what initially I was telling you, that that kind of approach, take it for granted kind of approach. Many people, they themselves do not know about training, and they are going there and training teachers, and that's exactly happens, and I can tell you also experiences, and somewhere. Let me share. So after getting job, let's say UGC kind of curriculum, you do have orientation program. So all the teachers, they have to do, university teachers, they have to do kind of orientation program, and that's, let's say, teacher training program, and refreshers courses as well. Let's say the next skill, you need to do some refreshers courses to get your promotion and all. So what I'm saying is that, so there are many people who comes to train those teachers, especially, or deliver lecture in those training center, training, courses, orientation or refreshers courses. What happens is that they themselves are not from the related field, and they themselves at times, they do not know what they are doing. So what is happening is that what is happening is that, because the person who is doing this, let's say conducting the orientation program or the refreshers course, because the person is a friend of that person, that's what he has come to give the special training, and so it happens, you see. So but in our understanding, especially, that's what I'm saying, so teacher trainer, if you are a teacher trainer and you are a linguist, you must draw some kind of let's say knowledge from, or inputs from, education and psychology as well, because these are the related disciplines, not because someone has simply told you, yes, deliver a lecture on education. Let somebody tell me that, so I'll have to think about it, let's say, to deliver a lecture in a related field. So let's say just we have a seminar, international seminar on folklore studies. Though I deal with folklore and all, and so the person said that, okay, why don't you give a plenary lecture? So I had to simply say that, no, I cannot deliver a plenary lecture in that seminar. The reason is as simple as that, because I am not a folklorist. I can simply maybe deliver a simple lecture there, but not the plenary lecture. So I just decline. So the person invited me simply because I'm from JNU, so why not, so I can give you the platform. So something like this. So if you are expert in the particular field, then go for it, and not so let's say for that lecture, the other lecture I'll be delivering in that seminar. So I have been preparing for that lecture for more than a month, and trying to learn folklore or folkloristic traditions in detail, let's say, trying to gain something, what is this or what is that, and so something like that. So if you are a teacher trainer also, so I remember one of our colleagues, now earlier he was the trainer. He did his PhD from our center. Now he's teaching in one of the institute, All India Institute of Management Studies. I think in Ahmedabad. One person is teaching in Ahmedabad, and another is somewhere in Amritsar, and another person in Lucknow. So I remember. So initially they have done their PhD, and then they joined in Google, and they're training those people, especially corresponding email communication. And email communication, I mean to say that, especially in Google, if you look at it, they have lots of customers, people write to them, and especially in the written language, you should not have that kind of mistakes. Let's say the problem with can and could, or shall or should, let's say. So so Americans, they may really feel bad if you says, can I do it, if you, so all that kind of modalities also have lots of meaning for that matter, you see. So those linguists are training those, especially those people who are responding emails of the, so they were in Gurgaon and also in other places, in Hyderabad and other places. So lots of let's say opportunities also in this case, and later on those 2 or 3 persons, they got their job in All India Institute of Management Studies and all, so they're really doing well, so an applied linguist working on language problems associated with immigrant. So immigrant thing is another interesting case. It could be And refugee concerns must perforce be familiar with social and political factors that will influence language use. So you need to know those social and political factors, what could be those. And okay, so there are many applied linguists working in institutional settings such as healthcare. We talked about language pathology for that matter, or law for that matter. Law, forensic linguist, as I was talking about, networking knowledge of the terminology, traditions, and practices of those traditions, especially law. If you talk about law, you have different kind of terminology, especially in the legal sector it is being used, you see. So you need to know those things. If you are a forensic linguist, let's say, and one of our friend from BHU, he himself claimed to be a forensic linguist, and Abhinav Mishra, I think if you are joining from, if you have done, anyone has done your bachelor's from BHU, then you must be knowing Abhinav.
Yes, sir.
Who is this?
Abhinay.
Abhinav. Okay. So Abhinav Mishra, so he's also forensic linguist. He claims himself to be a forensic linguist. If you talk, so then if you look at it, and I think Dr. Abhinav Mishra, he himself was associated with different cases, legal cases and all, and those things also came in the news also, how he analyzed the data and all that kind of things. Recently, I think there is one interesting case. It came in the newspaper also. So that's what I'm saying. That you need to gain it from other related disciplines. You need to know the terminology, the traditions, and practices of those institutions and all. You see, so something like this, and so applied linguistics in general. The kind of areas, if you are talking about, so there are many areas. So briefly, we talked about, so there are many areas. So I think I have sent you an article also in the Google Classroom. Please do read that article for the next class. Next class is that I am going to discuss that especially. And at 7 or 8 pages, a small article. It's EPG Pathshala module written by Rajesh Kumar, one of my, again, colleagues from IIT Madras. Is a renowned one in the field of applied linguistics. Rajesh and Professor R.K. Agnihatri. Again, it's one of the big shot, Agnihatri, and now he was earlier professor in Delhi University. Now he has retired, working in an NGO in Rajasthan somewhere. But R.K. Agnihatri and Rajesh Kumar, that the article, a small EPG Pathshala module I sent you. So please do read that, some kind of essential areas of inquiry, 7 or 8 pages. In the next class, we will try to discuss that and some other related issues. So what are the essential areas of inquiry if you're talking about mainly, so the field now includes work in general areas, cross-cultural pragmatics, and that's really interesting, cross-cultural pragmatics, that's especially in discourse analysis, I talked about this part, cultural pragmatics, cross-cultural pragmatics, so different culture, different kind of understandings we do have, let's say, saying yes or saying no also, different cultures does differ, let's say. And one way of saying in one culture is simply nodding the head, let's say. In another culture, saying yes is maybe something like this. So you need to know those cultural practices. So maybe in the class itself, maybe some people are not speaking. Some people are not speaking, not let's say, kind of unmuting and not part of the discussion to some extent. So that doesn't mean that they do not know or they do not have the knowledge about the subject, in my understanding, because every culture has a different kind of understanding, So there are many cultures, so they feel that, let's say, they want to give chance to other people, or they want to, somehow come. So why not give preference to others? Then I will answer something like that, and that's the way they have got this training from their childhood. Okay, give preference to others, and then your turn will come. But in other way, let's say in the competitive society, our society is something like, why not me the first? Why not me the first? So we need to know the cultures, let's say, and the cultural aspects as well, you see. So there are different cultural practices depending on different communities. We do have different kind of understanding as well. So we should not jump to a conclusion that, okay, this is something like this or this is something like this, you know. So assess the situation, you know. So psycholinguistics, another interesting areas, language acquisition, whether it's the first language acquisition or the second language acquisition. So always look into this. Socialization, language for a specific purposes, language for a specific purpose, ESP, mainly English for a specific purposes. Initially it was ESP, English for a specific purposes. Then slowly and gradually there is a demand for other languages, you know. Then it is basically language for a specific purposes, you know. And literacy, language policy and planning, sociolinguistics, that's already discussed. Discourse analysis, as I was telling you, rhetoric and stylistics, another part, literature, you know, whether it's English literature and other literature we're talking about, and translation and interpretation. So there are many areas of essential areas of inquiries we're talking about here when you're talking about applied linguistics in general. And these are in addition to the more traditional areas of concern, second language pedagogy, especially language teaching, as it started with, let's say, language teaching, language pedagogy, language assessment. We have already talked about that. Second language acquisition already discussed. Bilingualism and bilingual education, bilingual education for that matter. Bilingual, the word bilingual and multilingual is, let's say, the same terminology. Some people, bilingual is two language, let's say multi means many, but in linguistic terminology, many people, even if you say bilingual, at times it refers to multilingual as well. So we take it for granted that if somebody is talking about bilingual education, that means he might be talking about multilingual education as well. So it's taken for granted it's a kind of established term now. By it's not necessarily means two. Okay, so these are some of the things, essential areas of inquiry when you're talking about applied linguistics. So in other words, the questions that applied linguistics seeks to answer range over a multitude of disciplines and real world settings. So multitude of disciplines and real world settings. So we talked about the language use. So these are some of the essential areas of inquiry. And so slowly and gradually in this course, and if you look at the course outline, I have just mainly included, you know, mainly the language teaching part, and I think the translation part, language teaching, translation. I think assessment is also there, and I think what else? Some of the practical applications and the language pathology issues also I must have introduced, and mostly the theoretical aspects also, mostly the theoretical aspects, you see. So these are some of the things we have discussed today, beginning with what is applied linguistics, and let's say distinction between linguistics applied linguistics, and so as theoretical linguistics and applied linguistics. Okay, so I think that's all for today. I don't think we have enough time for today, but if you have, let's say, so to say, the things what is being discussed, we have 5 to 7 minutes or 10 minutes, let's say, then maybe we can briefly, I can take 1 or 2 questions, and then we'll wind up our discussion today. Okay, so is there anything, or everything is clear, sir?
Sir, hello, sir.
Yes, Abhinay.
Sir, could you please share this PPT in the Google group? It will be more helpful for us.
Yes, I'll send you the recording as well.
Okay, sir.
Once I get the recording in my email, so I'll share this recording as well. Okay, so you can see this. Okay, so I think PPT presentation to some extent is better. And so maybe in this class, I'll do both. In one day, we'll have discussion, another day PPT or that kind of discussion. I am comfortable with both. But one thing with PPT is that once you start sharing your screen, so only thing is visible, your PPT, nothing. That's the problem with Google Classroom. In Zoom, that's better. You can share the screen, and also somewhere there's a picture of you and also other participants you can see. Okay. So anyway, that's the technical thing. So what else? Anyway, okay. So what you are supposed to do for next class, in the next class, which is on Wednesday. Wednesday we have, so as I told you, so please do read, as I read Constitution of our India. I'm not telling you to read the whole Constitution of India, but at least the articles, let's say articles from articles 343 to 351, the linguistic rights and the language schedules, especially our 8 schedule languages and all, so that's all. One thing. The other thing, I sent you an article, that's what linguistics and its application, briefly. So we'll discuss about that part as well in the next class, and some other issues. It is already enlisted in the course outline. Okay. So, so if you do not have any questions, so then in that case, I will wind up our discussion today. So before I wind up, let me just take the screenshot, how many people have joined so far today. And okay, so if this is the case, then so thank you for listening and thank you for your patience, and I'll see you next Wednesday at 11 o'clock as per the schedule. Okay. Thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you, sir.
Thank you,
care.
sir.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir.
Bye bye.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you,
Good
sir.
day.